That day dawned without noise. There were no screams. There were no threats. Only the murmur of the wind caressing the strings. As if even the air knew that something important was about to yell at me. I looked in the mirror and did not see an empress. I saw a woman who, for the first time in a long time, was not afraid of his own reflection. I remembered the first time I shook. It was in that marble room when he soberly told me, "Today, without I want a divorce." I felt the world opening up under my feet, y que todo lo que solid in my life turned to dust. I did not scream. I did not beg alone. I shook inside, but today, that tremor no longer exists. Not because I have turned to stone, but because I took root that day, the day I did not tremble. I understood that true strength is not always noticeable. Sometimes it is quietly invisible. Like a wall, playing with wounds that no longer hurt. I sat back on the same chair in the same room. But this time, I did it with a straight back and a firm heart. I did not come to take revenge. I came to remind the world that it is not needed. Room to have power. If you've ever gone back to the place where you broke and didn't, Timblest comment, I am no longer the same. Like us, if you felt that your silence spoke, stronger than your pants and shares. This if you know that the real power, not imposed, is built after collapse. He was lukewarm to you. The servants came and went with the precision of a clock. As if the protocol could to disguise the discomfort that floated in the air. But I was no longer looking for comfort. Was looking for truth. I remembered the times I walked with Sobia. In the same room, sharing decisions, gestures, silence, thinking that love was synonymous with permanence. What and love now I know, it is not a guarantee. It is a daily choice that is demonstrated or lost. That day, he answered me with the same voice he used to dictate sentences, and instead of cowering, I crossed my legs. I looked up, and I answered, "That's all that's left of us." A cold decision and a burning mistress. I did not say it in anger. I said it with dignity, and he didn't know what to answer. Because I didn't expect me to speak. I expected him to accept that I would keep quiet, to break me like the weak woman I imagined. But I did not tremble, neither for him nor for his silence. I learned that sometimes the major revolution occurs when you decide not to defend yourself because you no longer have anything to prove. If you ever felt your dignity spoke higher than your pride, comment, I didn't leave, I got up. Like us, if you have ever been looked at, waiting for you to cry and smile. And share this chapter. If you believe that there are separations that do not break, only show you who you were before. Forget you, he asked me if I still loved him. Did not say it as a man seeking redemption, said it as one who throws a hook waiting to catch me in the dark. And for a second, I admit it, I wanted to lie. I meant that there was still something left to do. I said, maybe we could go back. But I didn't, because I understood that to answer him with a lie, pious would have been more cruel than telling him the truth. So I looked him in the eye, those same eyes that were once my refuge, and I told him, I don't know. But what I once felt no longer lives here. There was no scandal. There was no snow, just a silence thick that said everything that words could not translate. And in that silence, I discovered that love that begs, it is no longer love, it is dependence. I no longer depended on him, nor of his gaze, nor of its approval had I chosen me, and in that act, today had recovered something more valuable than love, my voice. If you've ever released something that was still hurting, please comment. To heal also means to say goodbye. Like us, if you have felt that freedom, begins when you stop explaining your decision. And share this chapter if you think that sometimes the real courage is to choose you, even if it means being alone for a while. I got up before him, not out of arrogance, but because I understood that this conversation was no longer necessary. I wasn't going to convince him of anything. I was not going to ask for your understanding. I was not going to reduce my evolution to a plea. He had lost me when he thought he could replace me without consequences, but he did not lose me because of the betrayal, but for not having valued what we built together. And that is not bursting with late. I walked to the exit with slow step, not to dramatize, but to make sure that every step will sound like a definitive closure. And behind me, he said nothing, because deep down, I knew it. I knew that the woman in front of me, it was no longer the same one who humiliated. I knew it too. Did not need a new title or a new promise. I just needed to look forward, without the ruins of what was no longer. And that was the day I did not tremble, neither out of anger nor fear. Not even for love, I just breathed and walked. Firm, silent, free, if ever. You felt that turning around? was your greatest act of self-love? Comment, I did not leave, I got rid of. Like us, if you have ever closed a door, and in doing so, you found yourself on the other side. And share this chapter if you know that not everything is final. Is a loss sometimes. Is a second chance with you. I went back to my room. The same one where I cried in silence so many times, where the walls, they heard what even my lips dared to say. Why sin embargo? That day, the room no longer looked like a confinement to me. Was a refuge, but not to hide, but to recognize myself. I sat on the edge of the bed, where I once begged heaven, that it was all a misunderstanding, and I saw myself to the woman I was loyal devotee. Blind sometimes I hugged her in my mind, not in shame, but with tenderness, because without that broken version of me, I would not be here, standing whole. Reborn, a maiden knocked gently on the door. Did not come with orders or dresses. Came with a note at the invitation of the emperor. In raid 2, go horseback riding. I smiled not because he was my salvation, but because I understood that I was choosing someone from my fullness, not from my emptiness. And that's the difference between healing and just being distracted. If you ever stopped idealizing your past to embrace your present, comment, I have me today, and that's enough. Like us, if you went back to a place that made you cry, and this time, you smiled and shared this chapter, and you know what to heal is not to forget, is to thank your wound for having shown you the way. I accepted the invitation, not out of courtesy, but because I understood that he deserved. Allow me the pleasure of a new beginning. As I rode the horse, I felt the wind hit my face, not as a threat, but as a caress. Every step of the animal on the earth, it was like a heartbeat, firm of my new life. Cain Rai looked at me, but this time not as emperor, but as a man who recognizes one equally to a queen who needs no crown to shine. And they're on the hill with the sun descending into the distance. I understood something powerful. Not to tremble means not to feel. Means that you have transformed fear into momentum, that your soul stopped running and began to remain. I didn't need words that day. My silence said so. All the most important battles are won when no one is looking, when you alone with you decides to go on without fear. If you ever chose to move forward without waiting, applause comments, my victory was in silence. Like us, if you know your value, it doesn't depend on what you left behind, but of what you chose to hold in yourself and share. This chapter, if ever, you transformed a fall into a statement. I was never the same again, and thank God for that. That night I wrote in my diary, it was not a poem, not a single lament was a verdict. I wrote, I did not tremble, not out of pride, but because I finally supported myself. I didn't need witnesses or trophies, just that certainty. Intimate perching in paradise. When you stop looking for validation outside because you already found it inside. I lit a lamp by the window. I let the wind move the strings and breathed. As one who no longer has to ask the world for permission to be happy, he did not plan to forget, he planned to remember without pain. And at that instant, I understood dignity is not arrogance, it is memory intact from what you are not willing to allow. Again, my hands and voice were no longer, nor the heart, and I knew that I would never again accept a half-hearted love. A magic chair, a look that does not see me. I had already seen myself, and that was enough. If you ever wrote your own freedom without anyone knowing, comments, I reconstructed myself in silence. Like us, if you ever felt that what you kept quiet about was braver than I thought, and shares this chapter, if you know that true power is not shouted, is lived with elegance every time. 3. You choose not to tremble. The next day there were no announcements, no decrees, nor rumors running through the corridors of the palace. But something had changed, and everyone noticed it. Not because of what I said, but because of the way I entered the council room, Serena, with the same crown on my head, but with a new twinkle in his eye. She was no longer the empress who avoided conflict to maintain harmony, was the woman who understood that sometimes conflict is the price of freedom. Did not raise his voice, did not beat the table. I didn't need to do it. My presence alone was enough, because when a woman stops, the world begins to crawl around you. Summarizes, watched from the other end and did not say a word. Because the language of respect, no talk is imposed with facts that day. The empire did not change, but I did, and that was enough. If ever your silence, stronger than 1,000 speeches, comments, my peace is my revolution. Like us, if you have ever entered a place where before you broke and this time you were invincible, and share this chapter. If you think there are days that do not end with applause, but with a look at the reflection that tells you, you made it, you didn't fear it, you did not fall, you were chosen,